My boyfriend's best friend cornered me and said, "You're not worth his time. Leave before he realizes it." I replied, "Let's call him and ask." 10 minutes later, she admitted the secret she'd hidden for 9 years. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 26 years old, and before all of this happened, I honestly thought I was good at reading people. I wasn't. The person who nearly destroyed my relationship wasn't some random woman Mason met behind my back. It wasn't an ex-girlfriend. It wasn't a stranger sliding into his messages. It was Emma Walker, his best friend, the girl who had known him since high school, the girl everyone described as basically family, the girl who smiled at me during group dinners, asked about my job, laughed at my jokes, and acted like she was happy Mason had found someone. For 8 months, I believed her. Mason Carter and I had been dating for less than a year, but it didn't feel casual. It felt steady, real. He was in graduate school for architecture, always half buried under sketches and models, while I worked as a software developer for a small tech company downtown. We weren't flashy people. Most nights were takeout, tired conversations, and him falling asleep on my couch while pretending he was still listening to me talk about work. That was what I loved about us. It was simple, but it wasn't shallow. Mason made me feel safe without making a performance out of it. He remembered small things. He checked whether I ate when work got hectic. He walked me to my car, even when he was exhausted. I did the same for him in different ways. Coffee during late studio nights, proofreading his proposals, listening when he spiraled over deadlines. So when Emma started acting slightly cold around me, I ignored it. At first, it was nothing obvious. A look that disappeared too fast. A joke that sounded friendly until I replayed it later. The way she always managed to bring up old memories with Mason whenever I was nearby, as if she wanted to remind me there had been a version of him before me. I told myself I was being insecure. After all, she was his oldest friend. People have history. That doesn't make it a threat. Then one morning, Emma proved I should have trusted my gut. I was sitting in a coffee shop a few blocks from my apartment before work. My laptop was open, my coffee had gone lukewarm, and I was trying to answer emails before heading into the office. The bell over the door rang. I didn't look up until someone sat across from me. Emma. She wasn't holding coffee. She didn't smile. She didn't even bother with the usual polite greeting. She just looked at me like she'd finally run out of patience. "Claire, we need to talk." I closed my laptop halfway. "Okay." She leaned forward, lowering her voice even though the edge in it was sharp enough to cut. "You're not worth his time." I stared at her. "Excuse me? You heard me." I waited for the laugh, the awkward smile, the part where she said she was joking. None of it came. Instead, she sat there with this calm, self-righteous look on her face, like she'd been waiting months to say those words. "Mason deserves better," she said. "Better than me?" "Yes." The directness should have shocked me. What shocked me more was how rehearsed she sounded. I set my cup down slowly. "Did Mason ask you to tell me this?" "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because somebody has to be honest with you." That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because the whole thing felt insane. Emma had spent months pretending to support us. She had eaten dinner with us, hugged Mason goodbye in front of me, liked pictures of us online. Now she was sitting across from me, acting like she had some kind of authority over our relationship. "Go ahead," I said. "Be honest." She seemed to take that as permission. "He's ambitious, he's talented, he has a future, and you're just here." I raised an eyebrow. "Here? You work at some tech company that could disappear next year." "It's a stable company." "That's not the point." "It sounds like exactly your point." Her mouth tightened. "You don't fit his life?" I looked at her carefully then. Really looked. This wasn't concern. Concern has softness in it, even when it's uncomfortable. Emma didn't look concerned. She looked offended. As if my relationship with Mason had personally insulted her. "What does Mason think?" I asked. She gave a small, bitter smile. "He's too nice to say it." Something inside me went still. "Too nice to say what?" "That he knows you're not right for him." I sat back. "So Mason wants to break up with me, but he's too kind to do it himself." "Yes. And you decided to do it for him. Someone had to." That was when I reached for my phone. Emma's confidence cracked immediately. "What are you doing?" "Calling Mason." Her eyes widened. "Don't be ridiculous. If he's been waiting for someone to say this for him, I'm sure he'll appreciate the help." "Claire." I was already dialing. Mason answered on the second ring. "Hey, beautiful. Everything okay?" Emma looked like she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. "Quick question," I said. "Your best friend is sitting across from me right now." A pause. "Emma?" "Yes." "What happened?" "She just told me I'm not worth your time. She also said you've realized I'm not right for you, but you're too nice to break up with me." The line went quiet. Emma whispered, "That's not what I I put the phone on speaker. Mason's voice came through low and sharp. Emma, did you say that? She stared at the phone. Mason, I was trying to protect you. From my girlfriend? From making a mistake. The words hung there, ugly and impossible to take back. Mason didn't yell. That somehow made it worse. Where are you? The coffee shop on 5th, I said. Stay there, both of you. The call ended. Emma stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. This is being blown out of proportion. I looked up at her. You sat down and told me to leave my boyfriend. Because you don't understand him. And you do? Her face changed. It was small, fast, easy to miss. But I caught it. That wasn't the face of a protective friend. That was the face of a woman who believed she had been waiting her turn. Mason arrived less than 10 minutes later. The second he walked in, Emma's entire posture shifted. The anger vanished. Her eyes softened. Her voice changed before she even spoke. Mason, please listen to me. He stopped beside the table. No, you listen to me. The coffee shop grew quieter around us. People were pretending not to watch, which meant every single person was watching. Mason looked at Emma like he was trying to recognize her. You ambushed Claire? I was worried about you. You told my girlfriend I wanted to leave her. Because you won't admit you're settling. His face tightened. I'm not settling. Emma blinked, like that answer had never occurred to her. You're confused. No, Emma, I'm angry. She looked wounded by that, but Mason didn't back down. You don't get to make decisions for me. You don't get to decide who belongs in my life. And you definitely don't get to corner Claire because you don't like that I'm happy. Her eyes flashed. Happy? You think she knows you better than I do? That was the moment everything clicked into place. Mason saw it too. The jealousy, the old jokes, the way Emma always inserted herself into his relationships, the way every girlfriend before me had somehow been wrong for him. He stared at her. Is that what this is? Emma froze. What? Be honest with me for once. Her throat moved. Mason's voice dropped. Are you in love with me? The color left her face. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Mason looked away, and the pain on his face was worse than anger. How long? Emma's eyes filled, but her voice was steady enough to hurt. Since junior year. 9 years. 9 years of friendship. 9 years of pretending. 9 years of waiting beside him while quietly resenting every woman he loved. I felt sick. Mason rubbed a hand over his mouth. You should have told me. Hope flickered across Emma's face. Then he finished. So I could have been honest with you years ago. The hope died. I don't feel that way about you, Emma. She shook her head. You don't know that. I do. You never gave us a chance. There is no us. Her face crumpled, but underneath the hurt was something darker. Blame. And it was aimed at me. Mason noticed. Don't look at her like that. Emma's tears spilled over. She took you from me. No, Mason said. You lost me the second you decided my feelings mattered less than your fantasy. That hit her hard. For a few seconds, she stood there breathing like she had been slapped. Then she grabbed her bag. This isn't over. Mason's jaw tightened. It is for me. Emma looked at him one last time, then at me. And I swear the look she gave me made the hair on my arms rise. It wasn't heartbreak. It was a promise. She walked out of this coffee shop, and the bell above the door rang softly behind her. Mason sat down across from me. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. I'm sorry, he said. I reached for his hand. You didn't do this. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it yet. Neither of us said much after that. We thought the worst part had happened. We thought the secret was out, the boundary was clear, and Emma would eventually be embarrassed enough to disappear. We were wrong, because Emma hadn't confessed to get closure. She had confessed because she believed Mason was finally supposed to choose her. And when he didn't, she stopped acting like a rejected friend. She started acting like a woman who thought I had stolen something that belonged to her. For 3 days after the coffee shop confrontation, Emma disappeared completely. Then the messages started. And that was when I realized the confession hadn't been the end of the story. It had only been the beginning. Mason wanted to believe it too. The entire situation had shaken him more than he admitted. Losing a relationship hurts. Losing a friendship that lasted nearly a decade hurts in a completely different way. One evening, we were sitting on my couch watching a movie neither of us was paying attention to when he suddenly muted the television. I keep replaying everything. I turned toward him. What do you mean? He stared at the dark screen. All the old memories. His voice sounded tired. There are so many things that make sense now. I knew exactly what he meant. Looking back, Mason started noticing things he'd ignored for years. The jokes. The jealousy. The way Emma always seemed to have a problem with every woman he dated. Moments you brushed off become impossible to ignore. Mason shook his head. I feel stupid. Why? Because everyone saw it except me. I reached for his hand. Not everyone. He gave me a small smile. Maybe, but I should have noticed. You trusted her. Yeah. He looked down. I trusted her. That sentence carried more pain than anything else he'd said. Because Emma hadn't just hidden her feelings. She had built an entire friendship around them. And now every memory felt contaminated. A week later, the messages started. Not to me, to Mason. At first, they sounded almost reasonable. Apologies. Explanations. Requests to talk. Long paragraphs about misunderstandings. Then the tone slowly changed. One message would apologize. The next would blame me. Another would insist she only wanted what was best for him. Then she'd circle back to how everything had changed after I entered his life. The pattern became obvious quickly. Emma wasn't trying to repair the friendship. She was trying to convince Mason that I was the problem. One night, Mason handed me his phone. Read this. I scrolled through the latest message. By the end, my jaw was clenched. She's serious? Apparently. The message was 3 pages long. According to Emma, I had manipulated the coffee shop confrontation. Manipulated Mason. Manipulated the situation. Somehow, she had rewritten the entire event and turned herself into the victim. I handed the phone back. That's impressive. What is? The amount of mental gymnastics required to make herself innocent. Mason laughed despite himself. It didn't last long. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Then another. Then another. He blocked her number. 2 days later, she emailed him. He blocked that too. Then she started showing up. The first time happened outside his architecture building. Mason called me afterward. You'll never guess who was waiting outside class. I didn't even need to ask. Emma. Yep. What happened? She said she just wanted 5 minutes. And I kept walking. I could hear the frustration in his voice. Not fear. Not yet. Just frustration. At that point, we still believed Emma would eventually accept reality. Emma wasn't struggling to accept reality. She was actively trying to replace it with the version she wanted. A few days later, she appeared again. Then again. Different locations. Different excuses. Always accidental. Always coincidental. Always impossible to prove. But eventually, coincidences stop looking like coincidences. One afternoon, Mason finally said what both of us had been thinking. I think she's tracking my schedule. I looked up from my laptop. What? She's showing up everywhere. His expression darkened. Classes, study session, Einsikam. Coffee shops, campus events. Neither of us laughed. Because it wasn't funny anymore. It was becoming unsettling. The situation finally exploded 2 weeks later. One of Mason's classmates was hosting a networking event for architecture students and recent graduates. It wasn't a party in the traditional sense. It was the kind of gathering where people exchanged business cards and made professional connections. Mason almost skipped it. He'd been emotionally exhausted lately. But one of his professors encouraged him to attend. So we went. For the first hour, everything felt normal. Mason was talking with classmates, meeting professionals, discussing projects, actually smiling again. Watching him relax felt like a relief. Then I noticed several people glancing toward the entrance. The energy in the room shifted. I followed their gaze and immediately felt my stomach sink. Emma. She wasn't invited. She wasn't part of the program. Later, we learned the event was being held in a public venue and registration wasn't checked at the entrance. That was how Emma got inside. The moment she saw Mason, she walked straight toward him. Not toward a group. Not toward the refreshments. Toward him. Mason's smile vanished. Please tell me that's not who I think it is. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Emma stopped in front of us. We need to talk. Mason sighed. No. Please. No. Several nearby conversations were already slowing down. People were pretending not to listen. Nobody was fooled. Emma stepped closer. I've been trying to reach you. I know. You won't answer. There's a reason for that. The rejection only seemed to make her more desperate. She looked around at the crowd, then back at Mason, as if she couldn't understand why this wasn't going according to plan. You're making a mistake. Mason crossed his arms. No, you are. Claire has changed you. I almost laughed. There it was again. The same script. The same fantasy. The same refusal to accept responsibility. Mason's voice hardened. Stop blaming Claire for your choices. Emma ignored him. She kept talking. Kept pushing. Kept insisting that nobody understood him the way she did. That nobody cared about him the way she did. That nobody would ever love him the way she did. People were openly watching now. The event had effectively stopped. Every eye in the room was fixed on us. Then Emma made the worst decision of her life. She reached for Mason's hand. He immediately pulled away. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Before anyone could react, she stepped forward and kissed him. The room froze. Mason shoved her back instantly. What the hell are you doing? His voice echoed across the room. Several people gasped. Emma looked stunned, not because she'd been rejected, because she'd expected a different outcome. As ridiculous as it sounds, I genuinely think she believed some grand romantic moment was about to happen. That Mason would suddenly realize she had been the right choice all along. Reality hit hard. "You need help," Mason said. Her face crumpled. "I love you." "That doesn't make this okay." "I've loved you for years, and I've never felt that way." The words landed like a hammer. Emma looked around. For the first time, she seemed aware of the crowd, the witnesses, the embarrassment, the consequences. One of the event organizers stepped forward. "It's time for you to leave." Emma ignored him. Her eyes locked onto me. The hatred there wasn't subtle anymore. It was raw, unfiltered. And honestly, it scared me, because she no longer looked heartbroken. She looked angry. The organizer repeated himself. "Leave." This time, security started walking over. Only then did Emma back away. Before reaching the exit, she turned around. Her eyes moved from Mason to me. Then she said quietly, "When she breaks your heart, don't come looking for me." A few seconds later, she was gone. The room slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed. People started moving again. But the event was over for us. Neither of us wanted to stay. The drive home was silent. Finally, Mason spoke. "I don't know who she is anymore." I looked out the window. Neither did I. The girl he described as family was gone. What remained was someone who believed she deserved a relationship simply because she'd wanted it long enough. And deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't the end. Because people who can publicly humiliate themselves like that rarely walk away quietly afterward. More often, they become dangerous when they realize they can't get what they want. And over the next few weeks, Emma was about to prove exactly how true that was. The first rumor reached us 3 days after the networking event. Mason was leaving class when one of his classmates caught up with him in the parking lot. The guy looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure whether he should say anything. Eventually, he asked, "Everything okay between you and Claire?" Mason frowned. "Yeah, why?" The classmate hesitated. Then came the answer. "I heard she's kind of controlling." That was the moment everything changed. Until then, Emma had been trying to force contact, trying to convince Mason, trying to insert herself back into his life. Now she was doing something different. She was trying to destroy his trust in me. And when that didn't work, she started trying to destroy our reputations. At first, the rumors were subtle. Claire isolates him. Claire controls who he talks to. Claire doesn't like his friends. Claire manipulates him emotionally. Most of the stories contradicted each other. The problem was that rumors don't need consistency to spread. They only need repetition. Within a couple of weeks, people who barely knew us were repeating things they'd heard from someone who heard it from someone else. It would have been ridiculous if it wasn't so exhausting. One evening, Mason tossed his phone onto the couch and rubbed both hands across his face. "What now?" I asked. He let out a bitter laugh. "Apparently I'm trapped in an abusive relationship." I stared at him. "Seriously? That's the latest version." I shook my head. At that point, it almost felt surreal. Emma had spent 9 years convincing herself she knew Mason better than anyone. Now she was trying to convince everyone else that he wasn't capable of making his own decisions. The worst part was watching how much it hurt him, not the accusations. The betrayal. He had trusted her, defended her, included her in every important chapter of his life. And now she was weaponizing that history against him. Then things escalated again. A professor pulled Mason aside after class, one of the faculty members he respected most, someone whose opinion actually mattered. The professor asked if he was okay, asked whether he needed support, asked if there was anything happening in his personal life that was affecting him. Mason came home furious, not at the professor, at Emma. Because someone had contacted faculty members directly, claiming concern, claiming he was emotionally unstable, claiming he was being manipulated. The accusations weren't believed, but they were heard. And once something is heard, you can't unhear it. Around the same time, Emma shifted her attention toward me. The first text arrived from an unknown number. "You don't deserve him." I blocked it. The next message came from a different number. "You're wasting his future." Blocked. Then another, then another, then another. Different numbers. Same obsession. The messages got longer, more personal, more aggressive. One claimed Mason secretly regretted being with me. Another claimed he was settling. Another insisted I was standing between him and the life he was supposed to have. The strange thing was that the messages never sounded like they were written for me. They sounded like Emma was arguing with herself, repeating the same fantasy over and over until she believed it. Every message sounded like it came from someone trying to convince herself that none of this was her fault. One afternoon, while I was at work, reception called my desk. "Claire?" "Yeah?" "There's someone here asking for you." My stomach tightened instantly. "Who?" The receptionist hesitated. Then she said the name. "Emma." I actually closed my eyes. Part of me hoped I'd misheard. I hadn't. She was standing in the lobby when I arrived, waiting. The moment she saw me, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who still believed she could fix everything if she just said the right thing. What are you doing here? We need to talk. No. Just 5 minutes. No. Her smile disappeared. You turned him against me. There it was. The sentence she'd probably been repeating in her head for months. I folded my arms. No, Emma. Before I showed up, he still wasn't in love with you. That landed exactly the way I intended. She looked like I'd slapped her. For the first time, she looked genuinely shaken, though not enough to admit she was wrong. Just for a second. Then the anger returned. Security arrived before the conversation could go any further. Someone from reception had clearly decided they'd seen enough. Good call. Because I was starting to realize something. Emma wasn't going to stop voluntarily. She was going to keep pushing until somebody forced her to stop. That night, Mason and I finally contacted an attorney. Neither of us wanted to. The idea felt extreme, but so did showing up at someone's workplace. So did contacting professors. So did spreading lies. The attorney listened carefully as we walked through everything. Between the messages, the rumors, the networking event, the unwanted kiss, and the constant attempts to force contact, the pattern was impossible to ignore. By the time we finished, she leaned back in her chair and said something that stayed with me. This isn't heartbreak anymore. The room went quiet. She looked directly at us. This is a pattern. And she was right. Every rejection had led to escalation. Every boundary had triggered a bigger reaction. Every failed attempt had produced a new strategy. The attorney recommended documenting everything. Every text, every message, every appearance, every witness. We started immediately. What happened next made our decision look brilliant. A week later, one of Mason's friends called. Not texted. Called. His voice sounded confused, concerned, almost embarrassed. Mason, I think you need to see something. A few minutes later, screenshots arrived. At first glance, it looked like my social media account. My photo, my name, my profile. But the messages were fake. Whoever created the account was pretending to be me. Starting arguments, sending strange messages, trying to make me look unstable, trying to make me look obsessive, trying to make me look exactly like the person Emma had been describing to everyone. The account might have fooled a stranger. The problem was that Emma got careless. One of the messages referenced a private conversation she'd been present for months earlier. Another contained details nobody outside our friend group could have known. That was when people started connecting the dots. Several people compared screenshots. Several people started talking. And very quickly, one question kept coming up. Who would benefit from this? The answer wasn't difficult. Emma. The fake account became the turning point. People who had defended her started backing away. People who had believed her stories started questioning them. For the first time, the spotlight shifted. Instead of asking what was wrong with me, people started asking what was wrong with Emma. The attorney explained that no single incident would have justified a restraining order. The problem was the pattern, the messages, the unwanted appearances, the networking event, the workplace confrontation, the fake account. Taken together, they showed a clear escalation that would be difficult to ignore. The restraining order paperwork moved quickly after that. Witness statements were collected. Screenshots were organized. Security reports were added. Everything was submitted. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. When Emma found out, she completely unraveled. The messages intensified. The rumors intensified. The victim narrative intensified. But by then, people were tired. Months of drama had worn everyone down. And unlike Emma, we had evidence. Actual evidence. Not stories. Not assumptions. Facts. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic. By the time it happened, the outcome felt obvious. Emma arrived with her mother. No attorney. No real defense. Just excuses. The judge reviewed the evidence for a long time, then looked directly at her. Did you create the fake account? Emma stared at the table. Finally, she answered, yes. Her mother closed her eyes. The disappointment on her face was heartbreaking. The judge continued reviewing the file, then asked the question nobody had managed to get through to Emma. Why? Emma swallowed. When she finally spoke, her answer explained everything. I loved him longer than she knew him. I watched Mason look down. The expression on his face looked more sad than guilty. Because even now, after everything, she still didn't understand. Time wasn't the issue. Love wasn't the issue. The issue was entitlement. The belief that wanting someone for long enough somehow entitled you to them. The judge granted the restraining order. 1 year. No contact. No approaching us. No communication. No indirect contact through friends. No social media. Nothing. Just like that, months of chaos ended. Outside the courtroom, Emma's mother apologized to us. A real apology. The kind that comes from finally seeing the full picture. She promised her daughter would get help. And honestly, I believed her. Emma clearly needed help. But by then, that wasn't our responsibility anymore. Our responsibility was protecting our own peace. The months afterward weren't perfect. Mason lost friends. Some apologized later. Some didn't. The rumors slowly faded. The tension slowly faded. Life slowly returned to normal. 3 months later, Mason and I moved into a new apartment together. A new neighborhood. A fresh start. No memories attached to it. One night, sitting on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes, Mason looked around and laughed. A genuine laugh. The first one I'd heard in a long time. "You know," he said, "this might be the most peaceful I've felt all year." I leaned against his shoulder. Same. The last thing we ever heard about Emma came through her mother. She had moved to another state, started therapy, started over. I honestly hope therapy helps her. By then, though, her future was no longer part of our story. Mason made his choice years ago. Emma just never accepted it, and in the end, that refusal cost her everything.